Hello everyone, it is Flame once again from Team Legends, and welcome back to another Union Arena video. With GenCon right around the corner, it is time to give our picks for the top 5 decks of the GenCon format. These decks are the decks that you are more than likely going to be running into as you make your run through the GenCon gauntlet. The decks are ranked from 1 to 5 in regards to 3 categories. They are ranked in terms of strength, consistency, and matchups against other decks in the format. If you enjoy this type of content, please let us know by leaving a like on the video and a comment down below, as well as subscribe to the channel if you find yourself coming back for more Union Arena content. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into the list. Now before we get into the actual top 5, I do have a deck that is worth mentioning, an honorable mention deck if you will, and that is Green Japanese Hunter from Solo Leveling. This deck had 2 placements in top 32 in the last Pomona Regional that happened a few weeks ago. One of the decks was piloted by Union Arena's most decorated player, Spencer Freeman. I put this deck as an honorable mention and a deck worth noting because it is actually a deck that fits really well in our current format. It is a deck that focuses entirely on rushing your opponent and getting the early pressure. It doesn't really care if any of its smaller characters get sidelined and can make a really aggressive push on its first few turns. I did want to throw this deck in as an honorable mention because it did make top 32 on its technical first try of actually running the gauntlet, and it definitely could see some traction the more people decide to play it. Moving now into the actual top 5 list, my pick for the number 5 deck in the GenCon format is Purple Shadow Army from Solo Leveling. This deck is no stranger to top 32 placements. It's been in the top 32 in almost every single regional it's placed at, and has even won 2 of the last 3, Peoria and Kissimmee. This is a deck that really focuses on making your opponent play your game. You can use cards like the Kai Cell in order to make your opponent not able to block with certain cards, or you can boost characters with Tusk so that they can't even block it even if they wanted to. All of the early pressure you put on your opponent then pays off when you drop the Raid Jinwoo on the board to get a snipe impact on a 5,000 body. On top of course, the sight card Monarch's Domain that is able to boost all of your Shadow Army affinities by 1,000, and it's not a once per turn, so if you're able to switch it back active with, say, the Raid Jinwoo, you can boost all your characters by 2,000 BP instead of 1. The only reason I put this deck at the number 5 spot instead of higher on the list is because we are moving into a more rush-heavy format. Yes, you are able to get early pressure with a lot of your small shadow soldiers, but the deck really does have to get up to higher energy and play a lot more of their double energy generating cards. Because of that, decks that are ranked higher than this deck typically have a better matchup when facing off against Shadow Army because they are faster or they have better gimmicks that can take care of the Shadow Army. Even though it's not the most powerful deck in the format, it's still going to be a deck that you're going to have to be wary of if you ever come across it. Moving now into the number 4 spot on the list, we have a deck that, likewise to Shadow Army, is really no stranger to top 32 placement, only this deck's been doing it much longer than Shadow Army, and that deck, of course, is Red Kenshin. Red Kenshin is a deck that has had a target on its back since it first came out and started making waves in the meta. It has been seen top placements time and time again, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. Despite what some people might say about this deck, the deck has actually gotten stronger instead of gotten weaker. The reason that is we finally got the Fake Zero Yahiko that was in the Japanese set, but was absent from the English set when the set first came over. The strategy of this deck has never changed. It is outright blitz your opponent and remove their cards in different fashions, whether it's to put it on the bottom of the deck or push it to the back row and deal with it later. The deck is of course very powerful and very consistent, and it fits very well in our current rush-heavy format. With its constant pressure and unique removal, it's no surprise why this deck has always seen placement, and of course makes this list in the number 4 spot. Moving on to the number 3 spot, we have a deck that really hasn't seen any top placements in quite some time, even though it's one of the oldest decks in the game. And that deck, of course, is Purple Toto. Purple Toto is a deck that has been making waves in the Union Arena community, with winning the Pomona Regional just a few weeks ago. Toto has always been a solid deck, but has always been a deck that needs the perfect format in order to make its debut. And I guess we are at that point in the format right at the lull before Chainsaw Man with its most recent victory. The Toto deck, in my opinion, ranks higher than both Kenshin and Shadow Army because Toto has a better matchup specifically against those 2 decks. If Toto plays against Shadow Army, it is able to absolutely annihilate the energy line that the deck needs to get its Raid Jinwoo. It can pull up the Kai Cell and the Tusk from the back row thanks to the Raid Toto. It can even destroy the sight card courtesy of the Raid Mechamaru. If it plays exactly against Kenshin, it can rip up the energy line by pulling a much needed double energy generating Kaoru out of the back row and putting it to the front line, and that puts Kenshin more on the back foot than anything else, as the Kaoru is a very pivotal piece that needs to remain in the back row to generate energy. The deck of course can also make use of impact and damage too, as well as unique forms of removal, with the Toto being able to rip things out of the back row, and the special Boogie Woogie that doesn't sideline any cards, but instead puts it on the bottom of the deck, similar to Ryutsusen. Because of its most recent success, you are more than likely going to see a lot more people trying to play their pet deck Totos here in the upcoming Gen Con format, and wouldn't be surprised if it got another placement in the top 32. Moving now into the number 2 deck of the format, we have a deck that is probably the most pilot-specific deck in the format, and that, of course, is Red Ava. Red Ava is the deck that keeps on going. It, alongside the Shadow Army deck, is one of the only tall decks that can actually keep up with the other quick decks in the meta. As we've seen time and time again, this is a deck that is always seen in multiple different fashions in the top 32s. It is a deck that makes use of multiple forms of removal and some of the most broken forms of removal in the game. Being able to utilize a 6-drop raid in the Ava Prototype 0 that is able to sideline any character, no BP specifications, and then reduces the cost of the next Shinji you play from your hand or DMS by 1 and 1 required energy, on top of drawing 2 cards when it's sidelined, is just a really ridiculous effect to have on a card. And of course, the big boss of the deck, the pseudo DMS phase, is essentially a triple attacking card with 5,000 on its first 2 swings. Its first swing makes it unaffected by every card, and then the last swing is a 10,000 impact 3 if all the conditions are met, which, to be honest, when aren't the conditions ever met for it? The amount of removal and the pressure that this deck can put up by just recurring itself over and over again makes this such a very difficult deck to deal with, and if you can't end the game before a DMS drops, you're probably not going to be able to take the game. It is, of course, a very pilot-specific deck, but because the deck has been out for a long period of time, a lot of those pilots have sort of gotten the strategy down cold at this point and are not going to really be making any mistakes, especially in the top tables. It has had several placements in the top 32, but it's still really looking for that number 1 spot, at least here in North America, so I can't really put it any higher than the number 2 spot. We now move on to the number 1 deck of the upcoming Gen Con format, and if you haven't already figured it out, it's Yellow Sakamoto. What is there to be said about Yellow Sakamoto that hasn't been said once before? Whether or not you are playing the pure store version or the Shin Heisuke hybrid version, this deck is ridiculous. The amount of advantage you can get off of raiding just 1 4-cost Sakamoto is almost criminal. Being able to go to the top 5 of your deck and grabbing any character you want and playing it to your front line active as long as it has 3,500 BP is ridiculous. It essentially plays the same way as raiding a Gaius and popping a Wonder with its effect in order to go to the top 5 and play any one of those characters on a 4 required energy card. The downside, of course, is that the raid loses its top rated card at the end of the turn, but when is that really a problem? Because you're more times than not raiding on top of the color, which blankets your board after the raid is gone. The deck, of course, can also do more things than that depending on which version you're playing. If you decide to play the Shin Heisuke hybrid version, which at this point is the most popular of the 2 options, you are able to get away with a lot of unfair things. The raid Shin constantly drawing cards at the start of every turn, plus hand knowledge on the turn it's raided, and ripping a card out of your opponent's hand to put it on the top of the deck. On top of the raid Heisuke, which gets sniped the turn it's played and can get impact at the cost of looking at your opponent's life, which in the late game stages could just spell the end of the game. If you are playing the pure store version, of course, you are able to take advantage of the 4,000 double attacking Lu by pitching a few cards off, the unblockable by 4,000s Lu, or you're able to take advantage of the other raid Sakamoto, which on top of him being unkillable with Nullify Impact, blanket protects another card on your board. Regardless of if it's the hybrid version or the pure version, Sakamoto is always just a deck that is going to be a really tough time facing if you are not prepared for it. And even if you are prepared for it, there's really not much you can do if the deck gets going. Your only hope against it is that you either hit good triggers out of life or your opponent doesn't find the pieces they're looking for. It is a deck that has a really good matchup against pretty much every other deck in the format, and we'll just have to wait and see if with the introduction of Chainsaw Man, those rankings and matchups will shake up a little. But that's going to wrap things up for our top 5 list for the Gen Con format. Let us know down below what decks you might be bringing to Gen Con, or what you might believe is the top 5 decks of the format. We'd love to hear about it. If you have not already, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you find yourself coming back and enjoying the Union Arena content. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.